Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, debt slayers, peasants, vassals, minions. I'm Useful Idiot. Welcome. And today I want to talk about Israel and Gaza and where we are at now. So we apparently have a semi-permanent truce, whatever that means in the language of Israeli-Palestinian negotiations. But more importantly, I want to summarize what happened in Gaza, at least on a superficial level. And I've only done one video about this onslaught on Gaza by Israel. Frankly, of course, it's been a story in progress, and I've been so shocked and appalled by the carnage and the brutality that there's been little for me to say. I've literally been speechless, and I've been channeling my energies into some tangential topics. But let's get down to some brass tacks right now. And as I often say, but never as appropriately as I use the term today, let's get down to the gruesome details. So we have well over 2,000 killed and over 10,000 wounded. And I'm sure those figures will continue to rise. And we have over 500 children killed. 70 to 80% of the killed and wounded are civilians. And we have now reported 68 entire Palestinian families wiped out. 20 to 25% of all housing in Gaza is damaged. In Rafah alone, 300 out of 2,000 homes were destroyed. Some villages are destroyed as high as 70%. The homeless population is now between 65,000 and 300,000, and that's probably a low estimate. There was an article in the New York Times that talked about the UN was thinking they were in the high estimate of ending up with 50,000 refugees that needed to be sheltered, and they are overwhelmed by 350,000. And as I mentioned in a previous video, Israel had been bragging about the fact that they had 400% more firepower than they previously brought to bear on Gaza 2 years ago. And so we are seeing the results of that, an intense amount of firepower concentrated on an area 25 miles long and 8 miles wide. And I know there seems to be a lot of strange people out there that think, why don't they try and get away from all this bombing? Are they an entire population of so-called human shields? Well, there really is no place to go, and we found that by seeing all the UN refugee centers that were also bombed. The sewage system has been heavily damaged. There's probably going to be a lot of problems with disease and other associated health problems. Water pipes heavily damaged. 90% of the water in Gaza was barely potable anyway, and now this will only make it worse. And then we, of course, have the power station, main power station in Gaza that was bombed, and all the problems that they've had with electricity in that area will continue to be exacerbated. 200,000 people living in UN shelters. 10 out of 26 hospitals closed, and one of the reasons for that is 24 hospitals and health facilities were bombed, 4,500 homes destroyed, 104 schools bombed, and of course a major power plant bombed. And there's variations of all these numbers in different sources, but the main point being that these facilities were bombed, and I'll leave it to others to quibble over the numbers. And then we have a percentage, 10% of the entire population is living in shelters, and once again I would suggest that number is going to go up considerably. And the military cost to Israel has been $3.6 billion, and Israel has estimated something along the lines of $30 million of damage from rockets, which I sincerely doubt. But the military cost is $3.6 billion. Of course, the United States taxpayers will pick up the tab for that, because that's roughly what Israel gets a year from the United States. And then, interestingly enough, we have agricultural destroyed. And that's an interesting sideline of the destruction of Gaza that doesn't get as much focus. The fact that animal feed mills and the infrastructure of greenhouses, irrigation systems, animal farms, fodder stocks, and even fishing boats are all systematically destroyed by Israeli forces. So another way to punish the Palestinian population on all of Gaza and make sure they keep them in slavery. And then on top of that, whatever food there is massive food price inflation they have to deal with now. And the only numbers I could get for animals killed is half the population of poultry of Gaza was killed in these strikes. But I do have some numbers for the attack of 2009 Israeli assault on Gaza. And at that point, 36,000 cattle, sheep, and goats were killed, and over 1 million chickens killed. So we could be looking at the same kind of numbers in this assault easily. In 2009, 4,000 homes were destroyed, 17,000 buildings damaged, 280 schools bombed. So we see the same blueprint over and over and over in Gaza. The agricultural systems decimated, the power plants destroyed, thousands of homes destroyed, schools bombed, mosques bombed, hospitals bombed repeatedly in 2009, 2012, 2014. So this is just how it is. Those are the tactics, and in fact, we have quotes from Israeli leaders. In this case, an Israeli general who, in Central Regional Command, who says that, quote, "When our forces come across civilians during a war, so long as there is no certainty that those civilians are incapable of harming our forces, then according to the halakha, they may and even should be killed. Under no circumstances should an Arab be trusted, even if he makes an impression of being civilized. In war, when our forces storm the enemy, they are allowed and even enjoined to kill even good civilians, that is, civilians who are ostensibly good," unquote. So as we've seen from multiple documents, including the Koenig Memorandum and the Dayala document that's come out about tactics Israel used in Lebanon, it's pretty clear that everything we're seeing in Gaza, of course, is absolutely intentional, and Israel knows it, and they mean to inflict collective punishment. And that's one of the things I left out in a video I did discussing similarities, or why do people compare Zionists and Nazis. And one of the things I should have made more note of is the entire concept of collective punishment. And one of the biggest outrages claimed by certainly Holocaust or Jews about the Holocaust is just the entire evil, diabolical nature of collective punishment by the Nazis, just picking a race and treating them this way for that very reason. And now we see the Israelis doing the same thing in Gaza, collective punishment. Essentially, they consider every Palestinian an enemy, and every person living in Gaza is essentially a combatant and deserves what they get from the Israelis. And then on top of that, we should also remember that probably every child that lives in Gaza has seen people die horribly. And many of the children, considering half the population of Gaza is under 16, many of those children have seen the Israeli invasions for the last 3 times. So this is the 3rd time they've seen it. So they've seen entire generations around them decimated by the Israelis. And then they wonder why we have this culture there, this culture of resistance. And another staggering figure is UN estimates that it will take 18 years for Gaza to recover from this. And there's the bottom line. That is what Israel was interested in, taking Gaza back 18 years. And as always, I would suggest that number is low. It's probably going to be more like 30 years, considering the damage. And there's no access to rebuild. Let's remember that we have a blockade on Gaza, and the building materials needed to rebuild Gaza from 2009 are not available. The building materials to rebuild Gaza destroyed by Israel in 2012 are not available. The building materials to build Gaza after this 2014 onslaught are not available. And I haven't seen the details for the new truce agreement, and I will be quite interested in seeing them. But I do want to take a look at the truce that was offered by Hamas July 16th. They offered a 10-year truce, and I thought their terms seemed quite reasonable, and putting their fate in the hands of the international community instead of the hands of Israel, which is a small price to ask. And I'll be very curious if the new terms of the truce are coming close to any of these. There's 10 points. One is the withdrawal of Israeli tanks from the border. 2 is freeing 500 arrested in the recent crackdown. 3 is opening the borders to commerce and people. 4 is international seaport and airport under UN control in Gaza. Let's remember, right now they're destroyed and they're not being rebuilt. The number 5, to extend the fishing zone out 10 kilometers. Seems like a small thing to ask for. Number 6, internationalizing the border crossing at Rafah to Egypt under the UN auspices, and that makes sense as well. Number 7, having international forces on the border. Number 8, easing conditions for permits to pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Number 9, prohibiting Israeli interference in the reconciliation agreement. The Palestinians are more than happy to go along with the Oslo Accords, and they have not undermined these previous agreements. It has been Israel, because every time Israel can kick the can down the road, they can confiscate more land and build more settlements, which is what they have done at a fever pitch through all of these negotiations and ever since the Oslo Accord, and they continue using it to punish the Palestinians until they're not going to have any land left. Number 10, reestablish the industrial zone and further economic development, so to actually allow Gaza and Palestine to build their own economy. So I think those 10 points, there's nothing that could really be argued with there. It's a very fair truce agreement, and it doesn't seem like too much to offer. And then I also want to be fair and bring up the fact that a lot of the internet is now seeing talk about the Hamas and the Palestinians executing 18 people as spies, as Israeli spies. And I don't condone that sort of behavior, summary execution, but I'm not there. And I would say that when you have a desperate population, the only way they can even remotely get back at the Israelis for these massive strikes is with these hardly effective rockets. But another way they can get back at them is a desperate act like this, and executing supposed Israeli spies. And this is what this kind of environment creates. But I certainly don't want to let Palestinians off the hook, because an event like this only serves to create more Israeli propaganda to use against them. And so it was an unfortunate move on their part, because public sentiment deservedly was in their favor. But certainly that event once again pales in comparison to the fact that over 10,000 Palestinians have been wounded and over 2,000 killed. And ratio-wise, as we also know, something over 60 Israelis have been killed, only 3 civilians, and all the rest soldiers in the field. Fair game in the theater of war, as they say. So there we have it. We'll see if this next truce holds. And in the meantime, let's characterize the events in Gaza as someone who is there would. A woman said it was very stressful. Still, she lived in privilege compared with ordinary Gazans. But she said that, quote, people have truly felt there is nowhere safe for them to go. I would say they're both terrified and terrorized. Terrorism. So who are the terrorists between Gaza and Israel? The debate goes on, I suppose. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.